Mega Man 11 boasts enough charm to stand alongside some of the better classic titles in the series with clever level design and great gameplay, but falls behind in other aspects that hold it back from being one of the greats. Make no mistake, however, for new and old fans alike, you need to play this title and see why exactly people have been excited about running and gunning since 1987. Mega Man 11 is the best numbered entry in the series that isn't done in 8-bit style. I've thought this playing throughout most of the game, and now having played through at least 3 times in total, I can honestly say this without a doubt. This is what I was personally looking forward to with Mega Man 7 and Mega Man 8. For Mega Man to perhaps control a bit different, but smooth as opposed to a bit stiff or too floaty. This iteration leans more towards the floaty side in my opinion versus the 8-bit entries, but controls well enough to feel like you missed a particular jump due to nothing but your own honest mistake. The only thing that makes this particular statement a bit less accurate is the knockback that now occurs after getting hit, and it makes the timing to abuse iframes something to get used to all over again. Or else you suffer some cheap beginner deaths as a result. This really starts to show in later levels that contain chase sections where you have to outrun something to avoid being killed instantly. Your charge shots feel nice. Sliding is still done the classic way with down plus the jump button, but can now be mapped to just a single button. This and a few other quality of life changes actually make Mega Man control better than any game before it. Both Rush Coil and Rush Jet are now mapped to separate buttons. No more need to go to the menus unless you need to equip a part you bought or use as an energy/weapon tank. It makes playing Mega Man 11 a smooth and inviting experience. The biggest gimmick this game has is also a big part of the plot, or lack thereof. This game introduces the newest change to classic Mega Man in a long time in the form of the double gear system. This allows Mega Man to shift into one of 2 modes temporarily. Power Gear mode enables quicker and more powerful charge shots, while the Speed Gear slows the action down for you to be able to punish enemies easier. No matter which you use, you have a certain amount of time to do so and switch it off. If you run up the double gear timer, it overheats and your next double gear usage will take longer, and some shots will also be slower or not work. There's an overdrive mode of sorts as well at low health that allows you to abuse both powers at the same time. If you overheat during this, you become paralyzed every few seconds to prevent the charge or regular shot. Mega Man has always been known for being somewhat punishing, especially for a newcomer. This game provides options for the normal players, the casual player, and the masochists, all with the different ways to take advantage of select power-ups, abilities, shop item usage, and in-game difficulties. The difficulties get special attention as there are 2 easier difficulty options for those getting frustrated in normal mode. There's casual and newcomer to fit these needs, each with more lives and more frequent checkpoints. In the case of newcomer, your lives are actually infinite. There's also superhero mode for those looking for a real challenge. There's even a dedicated challenge mode for various in-game tasks, boss rushes that you can test for your skills, and also complete for online leaderboards as well. The level design is memorable, even if it feels a bit empty in some sections. The game gives a less is more vibe throughout it. So this will allow you to enjoy how Mega Man games master the art of teaching you about future hazards in a controlled environment to make the stakes real, with a potential instant kill for making a mistake. It makes you have a real appreciation for the trial and error the game has to offer. Every death is justified. Some can feel frustrating but not cheap. The game isn't punishing by design, but you will pay for things you didn't catch on to in earlier rooms. The trial and error in a Mega Man game, however, is part of its charm. You can choose one of 8 Robot Masters to start with and have a somewhat easier time from there. Each boss has a weakness, and you can use said weakness to make the boss fight infinitely easier. One big change to bosses in this game, bearing in mind only the classic series games, is the bosses too have the gear systems installed, and will do an overdrive or desperation attack of sorts toward the final third of their health bar. At this point, they become harder to dodge and more damaging. One slight letdown in this department is only 2 of them. They have what look to be these mega forms that make the boss bigger, and more deadly during this period of time, in addition to the aforementioned details, but they are still memorable in their own right. Examples of this are Impact Man turning into a huge mandrill and Block Man turning into a huge rock golem. If any of the levels prove to be too hard but you just don't want to change difficulties, shops have returned. In-game currency in the form of screws are back, and if you get enough of them throughout your playtime, you can return to the shop between levels and buy up some extra lives, energy tanks, weapon tanks, or other power-ups that help manage the gameplay experience for you. There is even Beat, who saves you from pit deaths, Eddie, who comes in and brings you an item you can use for the stage, and Boots that reduce sliding for Tundra Man stage, which is icy. There are even Spike Boots. So your options for success in what feels like tons of failure in this game are huge. Now, this leads into my next point. As you get closer and closer to the end of this game, it feels a bit rushed, no pun intended. Usually after the 8 Robot Masters in traditional Mega Man format, you have Wily's Castle, which usually means you get around 4 more stages left in it. The first 2 are great. They're a good challenge and a test of what you've seen throughout. And they have both an old boss throwback and also a newer one that are both pretty fun in their own right. The latter 2, however, are over far too quickly. Within these levels is usually a boss rush of sorts, which you need to fight all 8 Robot Masters in one, or at the same time, all in one life cycle. The issue here is that there's barely a level leading up to this point. In the form of the 3rd Wily stage, and even the 4th actually has less to go through in this aspect. Now, the Wily fight is another form of slight frustration, as the encounter is slightly underwhelming and a bit easy considering previous challenges. Even the ending itself somehow feels a bit unsatisfying and can't be taken seriously. I understand I shouldn't expect too much plot in a Mega Man game, but the way it is treated, it's hard to speak on it without spoilers, but you may see what I'm getting at upon finishing it and get the feeling of that's it in your head like I did. On a lesser note, but also worth pointing out, the characters' voice acting brings new life into them and more of a personality than ever, even if they aren't winning awards for stereo performances. Even with all this said, Mega Man 11 is ultimately satisfying except for one detail which I cannot ignore. Part of what makes a Mega Man game great, or any game great really, is the music. The music isn't bad, but it is not to Mega Man standards at all. Outside of Block Man getting stuck in my head from time to time and the Wily stage theme, there really isn't much worth talking about. They went all techno style with this, but it sounds generic and lifeless. It lacks the punch heard in previous Mega Man tracks that get you excited to play the game. This is the most disappointing aspect, but also the portion in which I have the least things to say about. I know I'm missing one other thing. Something about a lack of slowdown when going through the boss gate. Look, if my choice were between good music and the gate thing, which isn't a big deal outside of the nostalgia factor, I'll take good music any day. Mega Man 11 manages to be a solid entry in the classic series that even sports a bit of replay value if you're looking to beat the game faster, up the ante for difficulty, or try out some in-game challenges. But it does lack the lasting impact of older titles that both control better and have more iconic music and levels. None of this is meant to take away from the value you get with Mega Man 11 at $30, but it's a great template for what may be to come if there's another few Mega Man games after this one. It finally feels like a natural evolution in the classic series for Mega Man himself, and even has a few new tricks up his sleeve to get used to, and it adds more depth to a familiar title. To go a bit further, this is what people wanted out of Mighty No. 9 and definitely didn't get. Luckily, Capcom, although late, has finally stepped up to the challenge.